I missed it.
I don't mean I overlooked something. I mean I looked directly at it for long enough that I should have seen it, and my mind categorized it as irrelevant before I'd consciously registered it existed. That's a different kind of missing, and it is significantly harder to protect against. I'm Jay, and what I want to talk about today is exactly that, the specific failure mode that nobody in this space describes accurately, because describing it requires admitting something about the nature of elite judgment that is genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. I want to tell you what that felt like from the inside, because this is the part nobody describes. It didn't feel like uncertainty. It didn't feel like a guess or a calculation or a weighing of probabilities. It felt like clarity, like the kind of knowing that experienced people have and less experienced people don't. I walked out of that room confident, not performing confidence, actually feeling it. The complete, settled sense that I had seen the situation accurately and made the right call. I had not seen the situation accurately. The most dangerous state a decision maker can be in is the one that feels indistinguishable from certainty. This isn't about investors specifically. I want to be clear about that. This is about anyone who has ever been in a room where something significant was at stake, a deal, a hire, an acquisition, a direction, and believed they were seeing it clearly. The CEO, the MD, the board member, the partner, the person with the track record that justifies the confidence. Same trap. Every time. Pattern recognition is not a flaw. I want to say that directly before I say anything else. It is the engine, the ability to take incomplete information, find the shape inside it, and arrive at a sound conclusion faster and more accurately than anyone else in the room. That's what elite judgment is. That's what every track record in this conversation was built on. And I respect it completely. What I'm describing is not a problem with pattern recognition. It is a problem with what pattern recognition does in a very specific situation, and why that situation is the hardest one to identify when you're inside it. Pattern recognition fails in situations that look familiar but aren't, not situations that are obviously new. Those are easy. You know you're navigating without a map and you proceed accordingly. The dangerous situation is the one that resembles something you've successfully handled before. Same structure, same language, same cast of people saying the same kinds of things. The brain identifies the pattern correctly based on available evidence and applies the response that worked last time. Except this situation contains one variable that is genuinely different. And that variable, the one thing that would change the entire analysis if it were properly weighted, gets processed as noise, as an anomaly in an otherwise coherent picture, as something that will resolve itself once things are underway. It doesn't resolve. It was the thing. The particularly elegant feature of this failure mode is that the more successful your track record, the more invisible it becomes. Experience is supposed to make you better at this. In the specific situation I'm describing, it makes you considerably worse. Stay with me, because what I'm about to describe happens inside every significant decision, not just the ones that go wrong. And once you can see it, you cannot unsee it, which is, I should warn you, not entirely comfortable. The decision arrives before the data. That is the mechanism, and I want to be precise about what I mean. You walk into a room with a situation to evaluate. Before the first slide, before the first question, before anyone has said anything of substance, something in you has already oriented, not to a conclusion, to a direction, a lean. The body registers it as intuition, as read, as the thing that experienced people have, and less experienced people spend years trying to develop. And then the analysis begins. And here is what I want you to notice about that sequence. The lean doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as a preference or a bias or a feeling you could identify and set aside if you chose to. It arrives as orientation, as the natural starting position from which everything that follows gets measured. You are not aware of having chosen a direction. You experience yourself as simply being present in the room, evaluating what's in front of you. That is what makes it so precise in its damage. The analysis, without any conscious intention, without anything that would show up in the process notes, is no longer a search for truth. It is a construction of confirmation. The questions that get asked are the ones most likely to validate the direction already chosen. The data that gets weighted most heavily is the data that coheres with the lean. The risks that get named are the risks that have workarounds, the manageable ones, the familiar ones, the ones that fit inside the story that's already forming. The anomaly gets seen, it gets briefly noted, and it gets filed as something that will be managed. The mind believes it is evaluating objectively. It is not. It is confirming a conclusion the nervous system reached before anyone opened the presentation. I have reviewed decisions I got wrong and been completely unable to find the error. The analysis was sound, the process was correct, the conclusion followed logically from the premises. The premises were wrong, and the premises felt, at the time, like simply seeing clearly. This is not bias in the way people usually mean it. This is not carelessness or arrogance or insufficient process. This is pattern recognition doing exactly what it was built to do, finding the familiar shape inside incomplete information and responding accordingly. The tool cannot distinguish between a situation that is genuinely familiar and one that merely resembles it. That distinction requires something the tool was never designed to provide. And the more refined the tool, the more seamlessly it operates below the level of conscious awareness. The smartest people I have worked alongside missed the most because their pattern recognition was the fastest. By the time the anomaly surfaced, the lean had already been running the analysis for 20 minutes. There is also a social dimension to this that compounds the problem at senior level. When you are the most experienced person in the room, the people around you are watching how you process information. They take their cues from your orientation. If the lean has committed you to a direction, the room tends to follow, not because they are weak or deferential, but because your track record has earned the deference. The anomaly that one of them might have named gets held back. It doesn't feel like the right moment. You seem certain, and the room adjusts to your certainty. The one question that would have changed everything never gets asked. I want to say one more thing about what this feels like before I tell you what doesn't fix it. When you discover you were wrong, not in the moment, but later, when the consequences have made it undeniable, the first instinct is to go back through the analysis and find where you went wrong. You look at the data you had, you look at the questions you asked, you look at the process you ran, and very often, this is the part that is genuinely unsettling, you cannot find it. The analysis holds, the reasoning was sound, the conclusion followed correctly from what you were given. What you were given was already shaped by the lean. You didn't make an error in the analysis, you made the analysis inside a frame you couldn't see, and a correct analysis inside a wrong frame produces a wrong answer every time, with all the internal markers of a right one. Let me tell you what doesn't fix this. More data doesn't fix it. More data processed through a filter that's already oriented produces more confident wrong answers. A slower process doesn't fix it. The lean arrives before the process begins. Slowing down the process doesn't change where it starts. Deciding to be more humble doesn't fix it. You cannot choose to perceive differently. The lean is not a choice. It arrives before the choice. What changes it is structural, built into the decision architecture before the room convenes. Before the lean has happened, before the nervous system has committed to a direction, a specific design that creates the conditions for the anomaly to survive long enough to be properly examined. That design is what the high-stakes decision logic dossier maps completely. One last thing. Everything I've described today happens inside a single mind, in a room where that mind has formal authority over the outcome. They own the call. But there's a version of this that's significantly harder, when the decision requires people who don't report to you to change direction. No mandate, no hierarchy to invoke, no lever that officially exists, just your ability to shift what someone believes is possible, without them knowing you did it. That's where we're going next. If you've ever been certain, genuinely certain, and been wrong in a way you still can't fully account for, if you recognize something in the last 10 minutes that you already knew but hadn't had language for, if the idea of a decision arriving before the data landed somewhere specific, the high-stakes decision logic dossier is where this gets mapped completely. Click the first link in the pinned comment, tonight, right now.